My name is Sienna Hewitt, and I'm 36 years old. Last Memorial Day, my younger sister stood up at our family picnic, raised a glass in front of 25 relatives, and called me a desperate woman who never grew out of broke. My parents laughed. My mother actually clapped. I lifted my own glass, returned the toast in 11 words, and 25 faces forgot how to swallow. But the story started 6 months earlier, at 7:42 in the morning, with one small notification on my phone and a folder I would not open in front of anyone for another half a year. Because when my family finally chose to look inside that folder, 3 of them cried. None of them was me. Before I take you back to that May morning, tap the like button if you've ever held a quiet truth for a long time. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read everyone. Now let me bring you back to Memorial Day, 6 o'clock in the morning, and a bowl of my grandmother's potato salad. The kitchen radio was already on when I came downstairs. It was playing something from 1962, Low, the way my grandmother used to play it when she made breakfast for half the county. I had set out the bowl the night before. I had measured the mayonnaise the night before. The night before, I had also placed a folder of brown paper inside the bottom of my canvas tote and zipped the inner pocket shut. I did not check the folder. I had checked it twice already that week. The wind off the lake came through the window above the sink, warm in a way that did not feel like Vermont yet. It carried the smell of pine and a thin ribbon of mayonnaise as I stirred. Dill went in last. My grandmother had told me that. Dill always last, so it doesn't bruise. I packed the bowl in the cooler with 2 ice packs. I packed a second, smaller envelope on top of the folder, the one with my Aunt Marlena's name written in pencil. The envelope was thinner than the folder. Some things are. I did not put on makeup. I did not change out of the cotton dress I had ironed Friday. The dress was navy. My mother once told me navy made me look like a bank teller. I had remembered the comment for 14 years, and I had bought the dress anyway. In the hallway mirror, I checked the time, 6:40. The drive to my parents' lake house was 40 minutes if I took the back road, 50 if I went around through town. I took the back road. A pair of mourning doves had nested in the eave above my front porch. They were the only thing that watched me leave. I locked the door, set the cooler in the back seat, set the tote in the passenger seat, and put the key in the ignition. The folder, against the leather, made a small, stiff sound that I felt in my hand. I had my potato salad. I had my folder. I was ready in a way my family would not recognize for another 6 weeks. I did not look back at the house when I pulled out of the driveway. The mourning doves did not move. The radio in the kitchen, behind the locked door, kept playing music from 1962 to no one. There were already 11 cars in the gravel turnaround when I arrived. By noon, there would be 25 people, give or take a cousin. The lake house had been in our family since the 70s, and Memorial Day had been mandatory since I was old enough to carry a chair. I parked at the far end, near the boathouse. I had learned years ago to park where I could leave first. My mother saw Tessa pull up before she saw me. I watched it happen from across the gravel. My sister stepped out of a white Mercedes, the kind with the leather that smells like a hotel lobby. Her dress was white linen. Her sunglasses were also white. She looked like a magazine someone had folded over. "There's my star," my mother said, and ran. She actually ran, which a 65-year-old woman with a knee replacement should not do. Brett, my brother-in-law, climbed out of the passenger side and lifted both palms toward the trunk in a gesture that meant nothing. He always trailed Tessa by a half step. He always carried the bag. My father was on the porch. He nodded at me. He did not stand up. I lifted my cooler from the back seat and walked toward the house with the canvas tote on my shoulder. The bowl was heavy. The folder was heavier. Aunt Marlena was at the cooler near the porch steps, rearranging beer cans no one had asked her to rearrange. She glanced up, my bowl down beside her. "Did you bring it?" she said. Her voice was so level it could have been about ice. I nodded. She put her hand on my forearm for 1 second. Just one. Then she went back to the cans. 20 feet away, Tessa was laughing. Something about the boathouse. Something about a memory only her version of the family had. The strap of her white leather purse made a small tearing sound, and the bag dropped half an inch on her hip. She caught it, laughed louder, said something about cheap craftsmanship in Italian leather. The cousins who heard it laughed with her. My mother had 2 daughters. One she introduced first. One she introduced when she remembered. I poured myself a glass of water. I waited. Tessa was telling the Tuscany story by 10:15. I had heard it once, 2 weeks earlier, on a phone call I had not been part of, but had still somehow received the highlights of through 3 cousins. "I just took Mom and Dad to Tuscany," she said. She was holding a paper plate she had not yet put food on. "They were so wrung out from the year. They needed it." I told Brett, "The parents come first." A great aunt of mine made the appropriate sound. 2 cousins murmured. Brett, behind her, did not look up. The truth, which Phyllis Crane had shown me in a printed bank statement 6 weeks earlier, was that my parents had paid for the trip themselves. Tessa had clicked a button on a booking site. The button had been linked to my mother's debit card. I let it ride. I had given up correcting Tessa in public around the time I turned 30. My phone vibrated against my hip. I stepped behind the porch screen, where the slatted shadow fell across the wood floor in long, pale stripes, and looked at the screen. The notification was from the trust account I managed for my grandmother's estate, the trust where my parents kept the secondary retirement money my grandmother had left for them, the trust I had been the official executor of for 10 years, although none of that 10 years had been a thing my mother knew about. A withdrawal had been flagged, $4,200. The account holder of record had signed it. The signature line read, Tessa Hewitt Merrick, 14 withdrawals in 18 months. This one made 14. I closed the app. I locked the screen. I took a slow breath that smelled of charcoal smoke from someone's grill across the dock. A portable speaker on the picnic table was playing jazz, the kind nobody listens to on purpose, the kind that comes on when someone with a streaming subscription says, "Set the mood." I went back outside, smiled at my mother as she walked past me, and she smiled back without breaking stride. She was on her way to a group photo by the dock. She did not call me over. Tessa's voice always carried. So did mine when I let it. Today, I was not letting it yet. By 11:40, I had carried out 3 platters and refilled the ice chest twice because nobody else was going to do it, and I was the daughter who noticed when things ran out. I stepped through the kitchen for the lemonade, and that was when I overheard my mother. She was in the small den off the kitchen, the one where my father kept the safe and his gardening books. The door was open 3 inches. I could see her shoulder. "Take the new car," my mother was saying. Her voice was low, the conspirator voice she used when she was setting up something she felt clever about. "Daddy and I want to see how you handle it. Try it on the highway. Take the long way back." I could not see Tessa. I heard her laugh. "Just don't tell anyone where the keys came from," my mother added. I kept walking. The lemonade was on the counter, condensation already pooling under the pitcher. Beside the pitcher, half folded, was a piece of mail. The envelope had been opened. The letterhead was an insurance company, auto policy, new vehicle endorsement. Vehicle, a current year Mercedes E-Class. Policyholder, Carol Hewitt. I did not pick it up. I did not photograph it. I walked past it, picked up the lemonade pitcher, and carried it outside. My sister had been driving my mother's car for 2 months and calling it hers in front of cousins and neighbors and a great aunt who would have remembered every word. In the bathroom, I ran cold water over the inside of my wrists. Not as a calming trick, just because the water was cold and the day was warm and I needed a second. The light through the bathroom window was butter yellow, the way May light gets at the moment of high noon when there are no clouds. I caught my own face in the mirror over the sink. I looked exactly like a woman who had been counting in her head for 6 months. I dried my hands. I went back outside. I set the lemonade pitcher on the picnic table beside the place where my father had left a beer. He nodded at me again. He still did not stand up. Tessa lifted her glass and tinked it twice with a butter knife. The conversations did not stop all at once. They petered out the way a porch light dims before a storm. Tessa stood by the head of the long table. The white linen of her dress caught the noon sun. Her glass caught it too. "I want to make a toast," she said. A few cousins lifted their drinks. My father took a slow sip of his beer and set it back on the table. "To my big sister." Tessa smiled. The smile was practiced. "To the one who always shows up broke, needy, and still hoping to matter." My mother laughed. Not a polite laugh, a real one. She actually clapped, 3 quick taps of her palm against her thigh. My father snorted into his beer. Brett's mouth twitched into something almost a grin. A first cousin near the cooler covered her own mouth with one hand and looked at the ground. For about 3 full seconds, nothing in me moved. The lake behind the dock did not move. The wind did not move. A dragonfly that had been hovering above the salt and pepper shakers did not move. I set my plate down. I stood up. I lifted the glass of water I had been nursing for 40 minutes. "I'd like to return the toast," I said. 24 heads turned. I let one breath go. "To the desperate one," I said, "who borrowed $18,000 from Mom and Dad's retirement account in March, then bought a Mercedes." Nobody breathed. Tessa's wine glass tilted in her hand. The red wine ran out of it onto the front of her white linen dress before she could stop it. She did not stop it. She did not blink. My mother's hand, the hand that had clapped, hung in the air halfway to her own collarbone, frozen. My father set his beer down very slowly, like a man diffusing something. The dragonfly went somewhere else. I lifted my drink the rest of the way to my mouth, took a small swallow, and set the glass back down on the table. The water was warm now. It tasted like nothing. I sat. I picked up my plate. I returned to the potato salad I had not yet eaten any of. Around me, 25 faces had forgotten how to swallow. Tessa recovered first. She always did. She made a sound that was supposed to be a laugh, but it caught somewhere in her throat and came out as a cough. "Wow, Sienna," she said. "That's quite the joke." I did not look up from my plate. "Sienna," my mother said. The clap was gone from her voice now. "That's enough. This is a family event." "Sit down," my father said, to no one in particular. I was already sitting. So was Tessa, eventually. Aunt Marlena, from the corner where she had been refilling cans of seltzer in a way that fooled exactly nobody, set her hands on her hips. "I think we should bring out the cake," she said. She said it the way a fire chief tells a crowd to step back. 2 cousins moved toward the kitchen. My mother turned her face toward the cake question because it was an easier question. Tessa pressed a paper napkin against the wine stain on her dress and made a face she had probably practiced in a mirror. I finished my potato salad. I drank the warm water. I excused myself to the dock. Aunt Marlena followed me a polite 90 seconds later with 2 paper cups of coffee. She handed me one. We stood at the rail and looked at the water for a while. The lake was the color of cold tea. A fishing boat moved very slowly across the far edge where the pines started. "It's begun, hasn't it?" she said. "I told them once," I said. "Back in February. Mom told me to mind my business. I take that as a contract. They get 1 warning." Marlena nodded. She drank her coffee. "Father's Day weekend," she said. 2 Saturdays after. That gives us 6 weeks. Phyllis can have the full timeline ready by Tuesday. I sipped the coffee. It was bad coffee. It was perfect. "They'll fight us," I said. "They'll fight you," Marlena said. "I'm a sideshow. You're the act." I smiled finally. It was a very small smile, the kind that happens at the corner of one mouth and dies before it gets to the other corner. The fishing boat passed out of sight behind the pines. I had 6 weeks. I knew how to count. The Hewitt Extended Family Group Chat had 217 members and a long history of cookie recipes. By 7 o'clock the next morning, it had a new top message. Tessa had posted it at 6:14 with 3 crying emojis and 1 prayer hands emoji. "Family, Sienna had a kind of meltdown at the picnic yesterday. She's been saying weird stuff about Mom's accounts. Please send Mom and Dad some love today. They're really shaken. I'm worried about my sister. Please pray with me. Aunts, I had not spoken to since Easter began calling. I let 3 calls go to voicemail. The 4th was an aunt I actually liked, so I picked up while I was making coffee. "Sweetheart," she said, "are you all right? Should I come up?" "I'm fine," I said. "The picnic was difficult. There's some things going on with Tessa. I'd rather not talk about it on the phone." "Of course," she said. She did not push. I made a mental note to send her a Christmas card with effort behind it this year. My mother called at 8:40 while I was rinsing the pitcher. "You owe your sister a public apology," she said. No greeting. Post it in the chat, today. "I'm not the one who needs to apologize, Mom. You humiliated her in front of the entire family. She humiliated me first, Mom. I just brought numbers. Don't use that tone with me. I'm not coming to dinner Wednesday." She hung up before I did. I made my coffee. I sat at the kitchen table. The mourning doves were back in the eave. By 10 o'clock in the morning, I had 2 private messages waiting on my phone. The first was from Uncle Phil, My father's older brother, a retired contractor who had said maybe 4 words to me at every Memorial Day for 30 years. Sienna, there's more to this. Call me when you're ready. The second was from Aunt Marlena. Phil says Tuesday, 8:00 p.m., Burlington office. Bring the whole thing. I poured a second cup of coffee. I opened the brown folder and added a printed screenshot of Tessa's group chat post. I put it at the top. Public moves leave records. Tessa had never quite understood that part. It was how she had always lost. Phyllis Crane had worked for our family for 23 years. Her office was in the back room of a building in Burlington that used to be a pharmacy, then a tax preparer, and was now divided into 3 spaces by drywall my father had once helped install on a weekend in 1998. The fluorescent ceiling light was the color of a school cafeteria. Phyllis was 64, gray-haired, brown sweater, half glasses. She kept 3 pens in a coffee mug that read, "World's Okay, Nana." She had never had children. I sat across from her at 8:03 on Tuesday. She slid a single printed page across the desk. "It's a timeline," she said. 14 rows from November of last year through May. Each row is a withdrawal from your parents' Trust B account. $8,000, $6,000, $4,200. She tapped the bottom of the page. The total is here, $864. I read it twice. "The most recent transaction," Phyllis said, "is here." She slid a second page across. "This one, last week, $15,000, wired to an LLC in Albany." I read the LLC name, Gravesend Holdings LLC. "What is it?" I said. "That part I haven't been able to confirm yet. The state filings list a registered agent in upstate New York. No operating address. I have a name. I haven't called." "I'll go," I said. "Drive over Thursday," she said. "I'll be in the office. Call me when you know." I stayed quiet for a moment. The office smelled like warm paper and the inside of a coffee thermos. The streetlight outside the window was buzzing. "Phyllis," I said, "the power of attorney." She nodded. "Your parents signed it last June. There's a clause in there I didn't write and didn't see when they brought it to me to file. It says, discretionary management of assets, including reallocation. That clause wasn't in the version Mom showed me last fall." "I have both versions," she said. "The original and the amendment. I made copies as soon as I noticed." I let that breath go. Phyllis was not angry on my behalf. Phyllis was organized. In our family, that was rarer than love. I put the 2 pages in my folder, on top of the chat screenshot, and zipped the inner pocket shut. Gravesend Holdings LLC operated out of a single office on the 2nd floor of a building in downtown Albany, above a bagel shop and a tax preparer. The bagel shop smelled like butter at 10 o'clock in the morning. The stairs creaked. The receptionist was a woman named Diane, who was reading a paperback novel when I walked in. She looked up. The waiting area had 2 chairs and a fern. "I don't have an appointment," I said. "I'm trying to confirm whether an entity is being serviced here. The entity is in my sister's name." She set the novel face down on the desk. "We can't share details on accounts," she said, "but I can confirm whether or not we have a relationship." I gave her the name. Tessa Hewitt Merrick. She typed. She paused. She read. "There's an active account," she said. "I can't tell you the specifics, but yes, the account is in active servicing. The balance is significant." "Define significant," I said. She looked at me kindly. She closed the screen. "I can't, ma'am. I'm sorry." I thanked her. I went back down the creaking stairs. I sat in my car in the bagel shop parking lot and called Phyllis. Phyllis put me on hold for 9 minutes. When she came back, her voice was very calm. $217,000, she said. "Consumer credit consolidation, active for 5 years. The Mercedes is leased through a separate company, but the lease payments have been pulled from a card that's now in this consolidation." I let one full breath out. "She's been drowning," I said. "She's been drowning," Phyllis said, "and pulling Carol and Doug under because she didn't know how to swim alone." I sat in the bagel shop lot for 20 more minutes after the call ended. I did not cry. I had cried about Tessa 11 years ago after a different fight, and I had decided then that crying about Tessa was a tax I was no longer paying. I opened a small spiral notebook in the glove box. I wrote a list. Mom, Dad, Caleb, Brett, Uncle Phil, Aunt Mary. I wrote the names of every relative Tessa might have asked for money. I wrote them all on the same page so I could see the shape of them. The shape was a hand. On the drive back from Albany, I took a long detour. I drove past my grandmother's old house, the one Aunt Marlena had bought from the estate when my grandmother died, and I parked across the street. I did not get out. The afternoon was overcast in the soft way the Champlain Valley gets in late spring. The grass in the front yard was uneven, where the previous owner, Marlena, had stopped caring. A bird feeder hung empty from the front porch. The screen door, which I had walked through 3,000 times as a child, had a new coat of paint. I sat in the driver's seat with my hands on the wheel and watched a stranger's car pass behind me and turn at the corner. If you're watching this right now and you have someone in your life who's slowly emptying everything around them, a sister, a brother, sometimes even a parent, and you've been the only one to notice, I want you to do something for me. Pause, just for a second. Tap the like button. It helps stories like this one find women who need to hear them. Subscribe if you haven't yet. The next chapter is what I did with the folder and what my mother said when she finally picked up the phone 3 days later with her voice very small. Comment one word, stay, just so I know you're still with me. I'll meet you back at the bagel shop parking lot where I had just turned the key in the ignition. I turned the key. The dashboard lit up. The radio came on, very low, playing something I did not recognize. A song from the 80s about a woman who had stopped explaining herself. I let it play. The folder on the passenger seat had not moved. It looked exactly the way it had looked yesterday and the day before. It weighed exactly what it had weighed when I packed it that morning. There is a particular weight a folder gets when you know what's inside cannot be unread. Mine had that weight now. I would carry it for 38 more days. I pulled away from the curb in front of my grandmother's house. The fields on either side of the back road were the same fields they had always been. My brother lived in a part of Portland, Oregon, that had become more expensive every year of his adult life. He had not visited Vermont in 3 years. He had not visited for Memorial Day in 8. He called me Tuesday night, 2 days after the picnic, at exactly the moment I was washing one plate. "Mom called me," Caleb said. "She told me you're attacking Tessa." I dried the plate on a towel. "Hey, Caleb," I said. "Sienna, is it true?" "Some of it is true," I said. "I told the truth at the picnic. The truth happens to be that Tessa took $18,000 from Mom and Dad's retirement account in March and bought a Mercedes." Long silence on his end, long enough that I heard the rain falling on his side of the country. "Do you have proof?" he said. "I have all of it." He let one breath out. "Tessa asked me to co-sign a $4,000 loan in February," he said. I said no. I told her I couldn't afford to be on paper for it. She got mean, Sienna. She told me I was abandoning the family. She said she would tell Mom that I didn't care about her future. She said she would make sure Mom knew. Did she? I don't know. Mom hasn't mentioned it. She wouldn't. Mom only talks about the children who don't disappoint her. He laughed. It was a tired laugh, the first warm sound I had heard in 3 days. "Send me the screenshots," I said. He sent 4. They arrived on my phone while we were still on the call. I looked at them on speaker. The texts from Tessa to Caleb were paragraphs long, full of italics, and the kinds of phrases people use when they have read 3 books on emotional appeal and 1 on negotiation. They escalated over 6 days. The last one threatened to tell our father that Caleb was selfish, like Sienna. That last word hit me a little harder than I expected. "Caleb," I said, "will you come for Father's Day weekend? There's a meeting." "Yeah, I'll fly in Friday." We sat on the line for another full minute without saying anything. He hung up first. The rain on his end did not stop. I saved the screenshots into a folder marked Caleb February. My mother called me at 9:14 on Sunday night. I was on the couch reading a paperback I had owned for 10 years and had never finished. The cover had a lighthouse on it. I never finished books with lighthouses on the cover. When her name came up on the screen, I marked my page with a receipt and answered. "Sienna?" she said. I knew immediately something was wrong. Her voice was small. My mother's voice was never small. My mother's voice cleared rooms. I'm here, Mom. I went to the bank today. I waited. I wanted to see the balance, she said, on the retirement account. The man wouldn't show me. He kept saying authorization required. He said it 3 times. What does that mean? I closed the book. I considered for one whole second, telling her gently, the kind of gentle that takes care of the listener and not the truth. I chose the truth. Mom, I said, Tessa has been managing your money. Did you know how much? The line did not go quiet. The line did the opposite. The line filled up with all of the small kitchen sounds my mother surrounded herself with. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint rasp of her breathing, a wooden spoon she must have set down on the counter. I trust her, my mother said. I know, I said. That's what she counted on. Sienna, I love you, Mom. She was quiet again. Then she said, I have to go. She hung up before I could say anything else. I sat on the couch with the phone face down on my thigh for a long time. The lighthouse on the cover of the paperback caught the lamplight at an angle and looked, for a second, like a folded white napkin. I picked up the brown folder from the coffee table. I opened the cover. On the inside flap, where Phyllis had taped a small running log of every conversation we had had about the case, I wrote a new line. Sunday, 9:14 p.m. Mom called. Bank refused to show balance. She is asking questions. She had not believed me yet, but she had asked. In our family, asking was the first form of revolution. It was also the only form she had ever been willing to attempt. That was a beginning. Aunt Marlena and I met for breakfast on Wednesday at a diner 3 miles north of the lake. The diner had been there since 1957. The vinyl booths were the color of pool water and patched in 3 places with electrical tape. We ordered clam chowder. It was not chowder season. The diner did not care. Marlena waited until the bowls were on the table. Then she set her spoon down without using it. I have to tell you something I've been carrying for 10 years, she said. I waited. When your grandmother was dying, she said, your mother came to me. She asked me to be the executor of the trust. She said she wanted it kept inside the family. I had not known any of this. I refused, Marlena said. I told her, Carol, give it to Sienna. Sienna's the one who can keep books in her head and balance them with one hand. Your mother said no. She said you weren't, in her words, professional enough. What did she mean by that? She meant you didn't dress the way she wanted. She meant you didn't introduce yourself by your title at parties. She meant the thing she'd always meant about you. The clam chowder was cooling. I did not lift my spoon either. So I went around her, Marlena said. 3 days later, I sat down with your grandmother. I had her sign a small amendment to the trust. The amendment named me executor, with a right to transfer the role to someone of my choosing, a successor clause, and a notarized signature. And then? 2 months later, I transferred the role to you. Phyllis processed the paperwork. Your grandmother was still lucid that week. She wrote a note for you. I put it in the file. You can have it whenever you want. I had not breathed out yet. Mom doesn't know. Your mother has been writing checks to a trust for 10 years that she thought your sister would eventually inherit, Marlena said. She's been wrong for a decade. So have I, about how long that decade would last. I lifted the spoon. The chowder was now lukewarm. I ate it anyway. The jukebox shifted to a Patsy Cline song. Now, Marlena said, we tell your father. Tessa found out I was talking to Phyllis on a Thursday. I am not certain how. I suspect Brett mentioned a name in passing that he should not have known. By Thursday night, my mother was on the phone with 2 of her sisters and a cousin in New Hampshire. By Friday morning, she had a story she was telling about me. The story was that I was trying to seize power of attorney from her and my father. The story was that I had become obsessed with the inheritance. The story was that I had, in Tessa's words, always wanted what Mom and Dad had. My mother believed the story by lunchtime. She called me at 12:40 in the afternoon when I was at my desk in the Burlington office. We need a family meeting, she said. All of us. The lake house. Saturday after next. 11 o'clock in the morning. We are going to settle this once and for all. I closed the listing report I had been reading. All right, Mom, I said. You will be respectful, she said. "Your father agrees. I will be exactly the daughter you raised." She missed the meaning. She always did. My father texted me 11 minutes later. The text was short. "Bring whatever you need to say. Be respectful." He used a period. He never used periods. I knew immediately what the meeting was. Tessa was setting a trap. She was forcing me into a confrontation early, before I had the strength of all my paperwork in front of me. She was hoping I would walk in with my mouth open and my folder thin, that I would lose my temper, and that the family would pity her. She had read me the way she always read me. She had read me as the old version, the version that had not been counting since November. I called Phyllis at 1 o'clock. 11 days, I said. Family meeting, the lake house, Saturday after next. Phyllis was quiet for 2 seconds. "All right," she said. "I'll clear the calendar. You print the originals. I'll print the certified copies. Marlena will bring her amendment. We will have everything on that table by 10:50. "Good." "Sienna," she said. "Once you put this in front of them, you can't take it back." "I know." "Just checking," she said. On the Tuesday before the meeting, Phyllis, Marlena, and I sat around the conference table at my Burlington office. The only light in the room was the desk lamp. The fluorescent overheads hummed away, but I had switched them off. I wanted the table to feel like a kitchen table. People tell the truth at kitchen tables. The 3 folders sat in front of us in identical brown manila. Phyllis had labeled them with a Sharpie. Folder 1, the timeline, 14 withdrawals, $8,400, bank statements stapled behind. For my parents. Folder 2, the power of attorney, original. The amendment with the inserted discretionary clause. The Albany LLC filings. The Mercedes lease pulled from public records. The $217,000 consolidation account. For everyone. Folder 3, the Caleb screenshots, the group chat post, the trust amendment my grandmother had signed 10 years ago, transferring executorship to me. For the table itself, the record of record. We sat for a long time without speaking. The desk lamp made one yellow circle on the wood. The folders sat inside the circle. "Once you put this in front of them," Phyllis said, "you cannot take it back. The relationships do not return to the version they were before this morning. You understand?" "I understand." "Even if your sister apologizes," Marlena said, "even if your mother apologizes, the version of the family that lived in the not knowing is gone." "I understand." I had thought about it for 6 months. I had thought about it on the back roads, in the bathroom mirror, in the bagel shop parking lot, in the diner over clam chowder. The alternative was that my parents would be broke in 14 months at the burn rate Phyllis had calculated. The alternative was that Tessa would never stop drowning. The alternative was that my father would die in 8 years and discover in the last month of his life that the retirement he had worked 43 years to build had been spent on credit card interest. That was not an alternative. I printed a 4th folder. I printed it on the office printer at 11:40 p.m., while Phyllis was already in her coat. "What's that one for?" Marlena said. "For Tessa," I said. Marlena looked at me a long time. "That's a kindness she has not earned," she said. "I know," I said. My phone rang at 4:07 a.m. on Thursday morning, 2 days before the meeting. It was my father. My father did not call me. My father had sent me 4 text messages in the past 2 years, all of them about plumbing. I sat up in bed in the dark. I did not turn on the lamp. "Sienna," he said. His voice did something I had never heard it do. It trembled. "Dad, are you okay?" "I went through the safe last night. I couldn't sleep. The bonds. The Series 1 bonds your grandmother bought me in 1986. They're not where I left them." I waited. I called the bank when they opened. I caught the early shift. They were cashed last Tuesday. $1,400. The signature looks like mine. It is not mine. I pressed my hand against my forehead. "Dad," I said, "don't tell Mom yet. I will be there in the morning. I will bring everything. We will go through it. Do not move anything else in that safe." "All right." "Dad?" "Yes." "You did the right thing telling me first." He did not answer. He hung up. I sat at the edge of the bed in the dark for 40 more minutes. I did not move. I did not cry. The clock on the dresser made the sound it made, the small, unkind tick. Tessa had accelerated. Whatever she had heard about the meeting had pushed her past the point of pretending. She was no longer skimming the retirement. She was gutting the safe. If I waited for Saturday, more would be gone. I packed the car at 5 o'clock a.m. The folders went into the back seat in a paper grocery bag, because a paper grocery bag does not look like anything. The lights in the kitchen window threw a long, pale rectangle across the gravel of my driveway. I drove to my parents' lake house with the headlights cutting through the fog along Route 7. A dairy farm I passed at 5:20 had its barn lights on. Someone in there was milking. Someone in there had been up since 4 o'clock. Somebody in any small farming town in Vermont was always up since 4 o'clock. I was going to be one of those people now. I took a long breath that smelled like pine. I arrived at the lake house at 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, 2 hours before the meeting. I had a spare key. I had had it for 15 years. I let myself in through the side door. The house was quiet. I expected it to be quiet. It was not. There was movement in the den, the small room off the kitchen where my father kept the safe. The door was partly open. I heard the soft scrape of a cardboard box across the hardwood floor. I walked in. Tessa was kneeling on the rug. The safe was open. A cardboard carton, labeled in my mother's blue Sharpie Mom's Papers, sat on the desk above her. She had pulled 3 envelopes out and laid them on the blotter. She looked up. Her eyes moved very fast across my face, looking for surprise, looking for an opening. "What are you doing here this early?" she said. "I'll handle this," I said. I stepped past her, took the carton off the desk, and set it on the end of the leather chair. I closed the safe door, but did not turn the dial. "Mom asked me to organize. I'll handle this," I said again. I reached into my tote and pulled out the 4th folder, the one I had printed Tuesday at 11:40. I set it down in front of her on the desk. "Read this before they get here," I said, "so you're not surprised." She looked at the folder. She did not pick it up. Her hand floated near it for 1 full second. "Sienna, read it. You have 2 hours." I went to the kitchen, made coffee, and sat on the porch with 1 mug. I left the second pot warm on the stove for whoever showed up first. I did not look back through the screen door. I did not need to. I could hear, through the still morning air of a Vermont lake in late June, the very specific sound of a manila folder being opened. She used to call my quiet a weakness. That morning, my quiet was the loudest thing in the room. She heard it for the first time in 32 years. She heard it well enough that her hands shook against the paper. The lake outside the porch was flat as glass. At 10:45, the cars began to come up the gravel road. Caleb's was first. He had flown into Burlington Friday night and rented a small gray sedan that he had driven the long way through the mountains. He stepped out of it in jeans and a flannel I remembered from Christmas of 2019, and he walked across the gravel and hugged me without saying anything. He smelled like coffee and a different time zone. "How bad?" he said. "It's bad. Are you ready?" "Yes." He nodded once, very small, and went inside to find our father. Aunt Marlena and Phyllis arrived together at 10:50. Marlena was in a navy dress. Phyllis was in a gray suit that looked, from a distance, exactly like every gray suit she had owned since 1998. They went to the kitchen first to set down their bags. My mother came out of the bedroom in a yellow blouse that did not match her face. She was carrying a tray of croissants she had not made. She had bought them. The bakery sticker was still half attached. "It's a family meeting, not a board meeting," she said, to no one. Her voice had a brittle cheer. My father was already at the head of the dining table. He had set down his reading glasses and his coffee cup. The cup had not been refilled since 7 o'clock a.m. His face was gray. Brett, Tessa's husband, arrived last, alone, in his own car. He came in through the back door, looked confused, and asked Tessa, "What's this about?" She shook her head, very small, and did not answer. I placed the 3 numbered folders down the center of the table. Folder 1 in front of my mother, folder 2 between my parents, folder 3 by Caleb. The 4th folder was already on the desk in the den. I left it there. Tessa looked up at me from her seat by the window. The wine stain on the white linen dress had been laundered out, but the dress had not made it back to her closet. She was wearing pale gray. "What is this?" she said. Her voice held one bright thread of rage. "This is what you've been telling them I shouldn't see," I said. "Now I'm asking them to look." My father opened folder 1. My father read the way he had always read contracts, slowly, top to bottom, one finger pressed lightly against the edge of the page. My mother read over his shoulder for the first 30 seconds, then took her own copy. Her color went out of her cheeks at the second row of the timeline. "This is wrong," she said. "This must be." "These are pulled directly from your statements, Carol," Phyllis said. Her voice was the same voice she used when she explained tax tables. "I have worked for your family for 23 years. Every entry is verified against your own monthly mailings. The bank confirmed it in writing on Tuesday." My mother looked at my father. My father did not look up from the page. Tessa drew a sharp breath. "Mom," she said. Her voice cracked in the right place, the practiced place. "She's twisting this. She's been jealous of me my whole life. You know she has." My father did not raise his head. "Tessa," he said. He did not say it loud. He said it the way he had said my name when I was 8 and had broken the glass cabinet in the dining room. "Where's the Mercedes?" he said. She did not answer. "Where's the money?" She stood up. "I'm not doing this," she said. She turned. She walked toward the front door. Her sandals clicked on the wood. My mother stayed in her chair. She did not turn to watch Tessa walk away. She did not call her name. She put both her hands flat on the table on either side of folder 1 and looked at the timeline. She did not cry the way I had expected. She did not cry the way Tessa cried. She made one sound, very small, that was not a sob. It was the sound of someone who had clapped last May while one daughter humiliated another, and who had now, for the first time in her 65 years on earth, understood the small, definite weight of the word complicit. I did not cross the room to her. I did not reach for her hand. I let her sit with it. Behind me, on the porch, I heard Aunt Marlena's chair scrape across the wood. "Let me get the door," Marlena said. Aunt Marlena got to the porch first. I had not realized how fast my aunt could move. She blocked the screen door with her body, which was not large, but which was, in that moment, somehow exactly the right size. Tessa stopped on the 3rd step from the bottom of the porch. "Marlena, get out of my way," she said. "No. I am leaving." "You are not." Marlena did not raise her voice. She had never raised her voice in my entire life. She had a way of speaking that made other people feel as if they had raised theirs without meaning to. "Tessa," she said, "sit down. We are going to figure this out as a family, or you are going to figure it out without one. Those are the choices. There is not a third one. There is no coming back later." Tessa stood on the 3rd step. The maple tree in the side yard, the one our father had planted when Tessa was born, made the small dry sound a maple makes in late June, when the leaves are all the way out and the wind is almost still. For 20 seconds, none of us breathed. Then Tessa turned around. Her shoulders had dropped an inch lower than they had been at the dining room table. The brightness in her eyes had gone somewhere I could not follow. She came back through the screen door. Marlena stepped aside. Tessa sat down. She did not sit at the head of the table, where she had been sitting. She sat in the chair next to Brett. Brett did not look at her. He was reading folder 2. His face had gone gray in a way I had only ever seen on people who had just realized something about themselves they could not unrealize. I opened folder 2 and laid the Albany LLC documents out across the table in front of my father, in the order Phyllis had set them. The papers made a small flat sound against the wood. Outside, on the dock, a single fishing boat was untying from the slip and motoring toward the open water of the lake. The motor sounded very far away. My mother was still sitting with her hands flat on either side of folder 1. She had not moved at all. My father read the Albany pages the same way he had read folder 1, top to bottom, finger pressed lightly to the page. When he finished, he closed the folder. "You used our retirement to pay your credit cards," he said. Tessa was crying now. She was not performing it. The shoulders, the hitch in the breath, the way her hands flapped uselessly in front of her chest. This was the unfamiliar version. Tessa had been faking grief at family dinners since she was 12. I had always known the fake one. The real one looked nothing like it. I was going to pay it back, she said. You are going to pay our money back, my mother said. The line landed harder than my mother knew it would. Caleb spoke from across the table without looking up from folder 3. Tessa, he said, I told you in February I wouldn't co-sign for a reason. Tessa did not look at him. Brett set folder 2 down very carefully. He stood up. He walked into the kitchen. He did not come back. We could hear, through the open doorway, the running of the kitchen tap and the small sound of a man washing his hands very slowly. The hands, in my family, had always been the place men went when they had run out of words. My father was still looking at Tessa. I needed it, she said. You didn't need it. You're already retired. You don't finish that sentence, my father said. Tessa did not finish it. The grandfather clock in the corner of the dining room struck 11. 6 chimes, then a pause, then 5 more. My mother lifted her head. She looked at Tessa. The yellow blouse looked, in that morning light, like the wrong color for any room. Tessa, she said, look at me. Tessa looked. I clapped, my mother said, at the picnic, while you said those things to your sister. I am ashamed of myself. Tessa flinched. Of all the things that morning, that one she had not seen coming. None of us had. I clapped, my mother said again. For the last 20 years. I am ashamed of myself for that too. She looked at me. Her hand came across the table and rested briefly on mine. She did not say anything else. I let my mother's hand rest on mine for one full breath. Then I gently moved it. There was one more thing on the table, and I needed both my hands free to put it there. I reached into the side pocket of my tote and pulled out the small envelope I had carried at the bottom of the cooler at Memorial Day, the one I had sealed in November and had not opened in front of anyone for 7 months. I broke the seal. I laid 2 pages side by side on the table in front of my mother and father. The one on the left was the original power of attorney they had signed in their own kitchen 15 months earlier, on a Tuesday morning when Phyllis had brought it over with tea. The one on the right was the amendment that had been filed with the bank 4 months later. The 2 pages were almost identical. Almost. I pointed at a paragraph in the middle of the right-hand page that did not appear in the left-hand page. My mother leaned in. She read it twice. She read the line aloud in pieces. Discretionary management of all assets, including reallocation, restructuring, and consolidation, without further authorization. I didn't agree to this, she said. I didn't sign anything that said this. I know, Mom. Phyllis cleared her throat. It is not enforceable now that you have identified it as forged, she said, but the funds withdrawn under it are gone. Recovery requires either a repayment plan or civil action. My father lifted his eyes to Tessa. Did you write this in? He said. She did not say anything for several seconds. I wanted to help, she said. By stealing from us? I needed... Don't, my father said. Don't tell me again about your need. She did not. I had carried that envelope for 7 months. I had not opened it once during that time. I had not let anyone else open it either. The first time it had been opened, on a sunlit kitchen table on a June Saturday, was the only time it would ever need to be opened. My mother reached out and pulled the original toward her. She traced her own signature on the bottom with one finger. My handwriting, she said. Yes, Mom. The other one is not. No, Mom. It is not. I had written a single sheet the night before. I had handwritten it on lined paper with a black pen in the kitchen while the ice in my water glass slowly dissolved. I had not typed it. I had not wanted it to look like a contract until it needed to. I laid the sheet down between my parents. I read it out loud evenly, the way Phyllis would have read it. 1. The power of attorney is revoked today, with notarized signatures. Phyllis can complete the paperwork by Monday. 2. Phyllis takes over financial stewardship formally for both of you until either of you wishes otherwise. 3. Tessa enters a counseling program, 6 months minimum, for financial behavior. 4. Tessa enters a written repayment plan brokered by Phyllis. Terms negotiated within 30 days. 5. Tessa and I do not have direct financial contact for 12 months. Personal contact resumes when she initiates and when both of us are ready. I set the page down. "That's the plan," I said. My mother lifted the page in both hands and read it again by herself. "Sienna," she said when she had finished, "I am so sorry." "Mom," I said, "I love you. We will talk about it later. Right now, please sign the revocation." Phyllis pulled a small revocation form from her bag. She had brought it. She had brought everything. My mother signed it. Her hand did not shake. She had stopped shaking somewhere between the timeline and the Albany papers. My father signed it after her. Tessa looked across the table at me. The crying had quieted. Her face had the stillness it had not had in a year. "Sienna," she said. Her voice was very small. "I don't know how to be your sister anymore." "Neither do I," said. "But I am not your enemy. I am also not your bank. Get well, then we will talk." I picked up the empty manila folders. I packed the original documents into a single accordion file. I closed it with the elastic strap. I put it in my tote. I walked out the porch door, down the steps, across the grass, and onto the dock. Aunt Marlena was already there. She did not say anything. We stood on the dock and looked at the lake. 6 weeks later, it was the first week of August. I painted the inside of my office a color the can called First Frost. It was off-white with a hint of green. The painter said it would look gray on cloudy days. It did. I liked it on cloudy days too. My mother called more often than she had ever called me before. She had not called the way she did now in 20 years. The calls were short, 4 minutes, 5. She would ask one small question. Should she sign the new homeowner's insurance rider? Did the gutter cleaner she had used for 10 years still seem honest? Did I think the lawn looked tired this year? I answered each question briefly. I did not turn the calls into therapy. We were not doing therapy. We were doing 4-minute phone calls. That was a beginning. My father started coming to the office on Wednesday afternoons for coffee. Not every Wednesday. Some Wednesdays. He would sit in the chair across from my desk, drink half a cup, and look out the window. He did not always speak. When he spoke, it was about contracts I was negotiating, or about a bird he had seen on the drive. Once, he asked me what kind of paint I had used on the walls. I told him. He nodded, finished his coffee, and left. Caleb called every Sunday. We talked about his bicycle, which had a flat tire in late June, and which he had finally fixed in the second week of July. We talked about my cherry tomatoes, which I had planted in May, and which had finally fruited. We did not talk about Tessa. Tessa did not call. Phyllis told me, in her quiet way, that Tessa was attending counseling. She had paid $400 in the first month against the repayment plan. She and Brett had filed for separation. The lawyer had reached out to my parents. It was a long road, and it was Tessa's road. I did not pursue it. On a hot day at the end of July, Aunt Marlena dropped off a small framed photograph at my office. The photograph was of my grandmother on the dock at the lake house sometime in the early 70s. She was laughing. I put the frame on my desk. I locked the office at 6 o'clock. On a Friday evening in late August, I drove to the lake house alone. My parents were not there. They had gone to my Aunt Marlena's for dinner. I had a key. I let myself in through the side door. I carried a single chair down to the dock. I carried a single glass. I carried a single bottle of white wine I had been saving since Christmas. I carried a clean white napkin I had ironed that morning. I set the napkin on the boards of the dock. I poured one glass. I set the glass on the napkin. The lake at the end of August is a different lake. The water is darker. The pines smell stronger. The light is gold for a long, slow 10 minutes before the sun goes down. I sat. I drank. I lifted my drink to the desperate one, and I said the words that I did not say the day I called her that at the picnic. What I did not say, what came after the comma, what I have been trying to say for 36 years to a family that did not want to hear it, was the truth. She was not desperate. She was drowning. And once I called it by its actual name, she could not pretend to anyone, including herself, that the rope had not been there for years, including the rope I had been holding by myself while standing in cold water up to my hips. I used to think family was a circle that included you whether you fit or not. I think now that family is a table you choose to sit at, and the right people are the ones who bring something to it. My table is smaller now. It is also steadier. If this story spoke to you, please subscribe. There are more stories of women who learn to set a table on their own terms, without apology and without speeches. The next one is in the description below. A woman whose father's funeral brought a stranger and two teenagers no one in her family had ever seen before. I would start there. Tell me in the comments, what was the hardest sentence you ever said quietly? I read everyone. The lake darkened by another shade. I lifted the glass. I took one slow swallow. I set the glass back down on the white napkin. I watched the water.